Hello everyone, so again, for the sake of copyright, I will be showing gameplay instead of showing clips from the show, so I don't have any risk of getting a strike. Please like and subscribe, or support me on Patreon. I would love to do this full time if possible. Also, before I get into it, this is a spoiler warning, as I will be talking about a lot of different moments in the show. So, I watched all of Black Butler, and Jesus, it was long. I will be going through each season and giving my thoughts. Since this is such a long series, I will have timestamps posted for each season I talk about. So season 1 was okay. The show's concept is pretty interesting. Watching the main character Seal in his life, working for the Queen and doing tasks around the underworld as the Queen's guard dog, you could say he's got that dog in him. There are some cool fights between Sebastian and the various beings they meet. Sebastian's the butler. Although the mishmash of people he fights is weirder than my search history. Some random butler from India, the bespectacled Grim Reapers, and the Angels. The side characters are kind of annoying though sometimes, like the maid and the other two servants in the Phantomheim household. You are shown the main reason they are hired later, but it does get really annoying seeing how bad they are at doing simple like cleaning tasks. Like some of the stuff that is common sense, but they still fuck it up for comedic value. It's not that funny, and just kind of gets old. Like the maid has got worse eyesight than me somehow, and the other two are doing things like using flamethrowers to cook and other shit. That's the thing about the show. It tries to do a lot of different things for comedic value, but just like my YouTube channel, a lot of times it's not funny and not entertaining. I would rather just see the plot move along rather than watch the annoying servants mess things up again. The supernatural stuff is pretty wacky, and that is right up my alley, but I think that the slice of life stuff is about as boring as my own life. There was an episode where they were trying to take a picture of Sebastian because the camera was like a supernatural camera, and Sebastian is a demon, so they wanted to see like what would show up. The episode is sort of an example of the more boring parts of the show. In a show like this, the more mundane episodes and actions just don't appeal to me. Maybe every once in a while, but there are a lot of moments like this in the show, unfortunately. The season has too many ups and downs and feels really inconsistent. Sometimes I really want to see what happens next. Other times I am kind of bored and just want the show to move along. I also think that the show is too goofy sometimes for its own good. There was a really dramatic part of the show where like someone is about to kill Seal and then the killer decides not to kill Seal, but then gets stabbed in the back literally by someone else. The person doing the backstabbing the entire time was making goofy faces and doing goofy actions for no reason other than their character, and it like does not fit at all with their actions it didn't fit with their actions at the time. This is just one example of the show not knowing when to be goofy and when to let dramatic and sad moments be just that. I think the ending of the season was great though. No goofiness, no jokes, just a bittersweet ending where Seal's soul finally gets devoured, supposedly. It is direct and straightforward, to the point, no noise. But it does make it hard to have a second season, I feel like. The ending was just that, an ending, and it makes it hard to imagine a sequel. I would give season 1 a 6 out of 10. And that leads us to season 2. This season was a complete mess. I have no idea what I watched, but everything was worse except the action, which is basically the same as it was in season 1, except the context behind it is stupid. The characters are worse besides Sebastian. Seal is worse since here he has lost his memories, supposedly, and has lost a lot of context and reasons behind his actions. The new antagonists, Claude and Alois, are not well written and are all over the place. The side characters are actually the same, and thank goodness, even though they don't show up much. Lau is here again, but he serves no purpose and shouldn't even be here because he should have died or at least been out of the show forever. That was part of the point of Lau's betrayal, and this season kind of ruins that. The plot is also as bad as Future Canoe's Radioactive Chicken. If the first season was a trail of breadcrumbs that led to the ultimate finale, then this season is the pigeons that eat all of the breadcrumbs and ruins the path. Sorry about the terrible analogy. This is a spoiler warning, by the way. The show starts with some bullshit about Seal losing his memories, and the first season, after the first season, when it was supposed to be devoured. And for some reason, his soul is like contained in his ring or some shit. And like Sebastian, for like the first episode, tries to get this, like the whole point is trying to get the ring back. And then the show introduces the main antagonists, which is just Discount, Seal, and Sebastian. And then the show tries to spin things so that Seal wants revenge on Alois so that Claude and Sebastian can compete to eat Seal's soul or something. Like, what? The season made absolutely no sense. And then Claude, for some reason, who should want to devour Alois, kills Alois, but not really. He just seals his soul in Alois' ring, and then Seal gets possessed by the soul of Alois, and he and Alois fight for control. This show's plot is just full of these twists and turns, but they aren't good. They are all really stupid. And in the end, Seal gets turned into a demon as well, and so Sebastian is forced to serve him forever or something. These plot devices and twists are so out of there, so badly written that it ruins the season. I think that the writing for this season is some of the worst writing I have ever watched. Not just in anime, but in everything. It's a shame because the show, I think, is still somewhat well made. The animation is good for 2010, the music is well done, and the setting is still pretty interesting to me. But the writing just ruins all of that. I would give Black Butler Season 2 a 3 out of 10. The next season I watched is apparently not a sequel to Season 2. It's called Book of Circus. The art style has sort of changed, and not really for the better. I don't know what it is about the new art style, but it's missing that rustic feeling of the old style, like an old school English kind of style. Not really sure how to describe it, but that's just how I feel. It's like when you don't score the steak. It's lost its unique flavoring. The soundtrack is pretty good though, a mix of old-timey accordion music, some rock, as well as some sort of gypsy sounding music for the circus stuff. I think that the writing for this season is a million times better than Black Butler Season 2. This takes place sometime in Season 1, where Seal is tasked by the Queen with rescuing children that are being kidnapped, and they suspect the circus is involved, since it only happens when they are in town. I like that it delved more into Seal and his trauma, and it does make you really feel for the circus members, although they are in fact kidnapping children. I do think that their finales, although quick, did feel deserved, and even though they were attempting to kill Seal, which is, again, them kidnapping children, karma, am I right? One thing I did not like was that at the end, Seal decides to just light the entire mansion on fire where the children were kidnapped without rescuing the children, so they get cooked like a well done steak. That defeated the whole purpose of your mission to rescue them in the first place. I get you have trauma and stuff, but you are just going to let all the kids die? The season was definitely very brutal in that aspect. You actually see some of the kids that were brainwashed get killed pretty brutally this season. And Joker, one of the circus members, has the audacity to beg Seal not to kill the Baron, who was the one telling the circus people to do the kidnapping. Man's gotta get his priorities straight. I also still do not like the goofy parts of this season. There's a lot of really dramatic deaths that happen in the season, and right after you have, once again, that Grim Reaper just acting goofy and simping for Sebastian, it's jarring and not in a good way. I think that when the show is acting goofy and the plot is not moving along is when the show is at its weakest. But despite that, I do think that this season was a good watch and way better than Season 2. I would give this special a 7 out of 10. Next season we have is the Book of Death. The Book of Death season was an interesting addition, but I felt like it slightly lagged behind the past good season. In this season, Seal is hosting a dinner party, and all of a sudden people start dying off, and it's up to the rest of the guests to figure out what is happening. The story is your classic murder mystery in a mansion trope, and its execution is just okay. Spoiler warning, by the way. I think that what threw me off is when Sebastian, quote-unquote, died. This part was weird, and you know that they were pulling something besides, because Sebastian literally cannot die since he's a demon. They made it a point in the previous seasons, to point that out. So his death did not fit, and it made pretty obvious that something else was at play and that Seal or Sebastian was pulling some trick. I just did not know what that trick was or why they were faking his death. Other than that, for the majority of the season, it was a typical murder mystery. Someone gets murdered, the guests all check each other's alibis, and then there's a sleuth that is tasked with making the small details of the murder make sense in the end. The twist, however, was pretty interesting. It turns out that the sleuth of this gang was actually Sebastian in disguise. Surprise! I did have a sneaking suspicion of it, but I was still pleasantly surprised by it. I was also surprised that it was the Queen's Guard that committed most of the murders, and that it was all sort of a test for Seal from the Queen. I did think that that snake being there, like the snake that was there by the snake guy who wanted revenge, that one was a bit more obvious, like as to like who killed them via snake. And wow, shocker, Sebastian's alive. Like, worst reveal since my dating life. All in all, I think this was a short but sweet season of sort of a short but sweet season. Nothing much to talk about. I would give it a 6 out of 10. Next we have The Book of the Atlantic, which is a movie. And the movie is okay. It is sort of your standard zombie movie, but with a demonic butler and on a boat. I think that initially it was a bit interesting with them doing recon into some sort of cult that wants to like cheat death. But then as the movie goes on, it sort of just becomes your standard zombie movie, but on a boat. One of the things that did kind of throw me off was that there are way more zombies than there should have been. Like, why did the guy who's trying to revive the dead bring so many corpses on the boat in the first place? Like, I would get it if he brought like a couple onto the ship to test the revival machine that he created and stuff, but what is the point of bringing like tens of hundreds of corpses onto the boat? Also, the number of zombies way surpassed what was initially the number of corpses, it felt like. Like, there was a point where the revival guy said he brought like 10 times the amount of initial cargo, 10 times the amount of corpses that were in the initial cargo hold into the other cargo hold that was on the ship. But that number felt like it ballooned to way more than just 10 times the amount. Either way, the numbers just didn't add up. I will say though, I did think it was really cool that Elizabeth turned out to be a badass sword wielder and starts like dancing on the zombies and killing a shit ton of them. The scene was really cool and gave that character more depth, and you saw the reasons for her actions as to why she does not want Seal to see her that way. I thought that it was pretty cool. And even though I still don't like the Shinigamis and all that, like, really goofy stuff at the time, I do think it was interesting that it turns out that Undertaker, who is a Shinigami, was the true reason for all the zombies, and the Shinigami and Sebastian were all fighting each other towards the end. And the fight scenes are all pretty well done, to be honest. All in all, the movie was pretty, like, okay. It was okay. 6 out of 10. Next is the public school arc. This arc was okay, but it was somewhat boring for the most part. This arc was essentially Hogwarts, but without the magic. There's a school, and the school has 4 houses the students are split into, with a budding rivalry between houses. Each house has 4 prefects, and they are in charge of running each house and the leaders of their house, and are the leaders of their houses. There is some other stuff, but I don't really want to get too into the details because nobody really cares. The main thing is that Seal is tasked with finding out why some of the students have disappeared from the school. For the most part, this arc was pretty boring. Maybe it's because the setting is not that exciting, but I could not get into all of the school stuff, all the rivalries and all the petty school shit. There were exciting moments though. The cricket match was surprisingly interesting to watch, seeing the teams fight for the championship. I don't know shit about cricket, and I was kind of into it still. I also think that the twist at the end was sort of interesting as well, but that's about it. The beginning and middle of the were full of like school stuff between students and the prefects, and Seal trying to get into the prefect's inner circle. And the twist at the end, the pacing for it was not good, because the entire thing just turns into expository crap and flashbacks to explain why things were done and like the motives and stuff. I did not think it was well paced. I think that the entire season was not paced well, to be honest. The need to find out what happens to the students that went missing does keep you watching since you want to find out what happens, but the execution and setting really dampened the intrigue and mystery. I would give this season a 5 out of 10. And finally, we get to the last arc that is currently out, the Emerald Witch arc. This arc was pretty good. I thought that the writing for this arc was great. Some people are getting a mysterious illness in some woods in Germany, and it's up to Seal and the gang to go there and investigate the so-called curse. The Emerald Witch was a good addition to the characters at hand. I think that her backstory and her role as the witch are really well done, and there's a twist this season that I personally think was really well done. Spoiler warning, by the way. I thought that the arc had actual magic that was taking place with curses and everything, because like, you know, Sebastian exists and like the Grim Reapers exist, and this season definitely threw me for a loop. I did not realize that the whole thing was a sham, and it was actually a secret laboratory in the woods that had the goal of developing the stronger version of mustard gas and that it was related to the German military. The fact that everyone but the witch was in on the scam, I did not expect at all. With Sebastian being a demon and all, I expected real magic, and the show does a great job of throwing you for a loop. You really feel for the witch and her plight, and you want to see her freed. I also think that the Wolfram guy was an interesting addition as well. The witch and Wolfram make a great duo, and I can't wait to see if they appear in newer seasons. I do think that again, though the pacing is kind of an issue. Like, the first 11 episodes are pretty great, the plot is pretty well paced and the writing is pretty good, and the setting is interesting and the show keeps you engaged with the plot. After they get out of the forest though, there are still 2 episodes of like useless shit, where it just becomes a slice of life show again and they go around shopping and getting the Emerald Witch ready to meet the queen. That is it. The show should have ended on whatever episode they finally escape the forest in, and that is what I think, but it just carries on for too long. I would give this season as a whole a 7 out of 10. As a whole, the Black Butler series is a mixed bag, just like my motivation. I think that there are some good moments, but also some boring and one atrocious season. As a whole, I would give the entirety of the show a 5 out of 10.